I spent a lot of time alone as a kid. Whenever I wasn't building Legos or knocking action figures together, I was playing my SNES. Sure, I like games like Mario and Donkey Kong Country, but my real passion was for JRPGs. The stories, the characters, the worlds, they spoke to me in a language I didn't even know I knew. I remember staying up past bedtime, towel stuffed under the door to hide the glow of the screen, determined to reach the next chapter. The characters became more than just pixels. Whenever my parents were angry or I had a bad day at school, I could escape to another world and go on an adventure with these make-believe souls who had, in some way, become real to me. Over the years, it wasn't the graphics or the mechanics that stuck with me. It was the experience. So when I started my indie game, I didn't start with a plan. I started with a feeling. Neverspring Chronicles is heavily influenced by 3 JRPGs from the 1990s. Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy III, and Chrono Trigger. At first, I had these grand plans for the greatest JRPG ever.
Phenomenal cosmic power!
I wrote out all this lore, hand-drew maps, and constantly fantasized about all the cool scenes I wanted to bring to life. But a few years in, I realized I'd bitten off way more than I could chew. The only thing matching my ambition was my inexperience. Just to put things in perspective, Neverspring Chronicles today is about 20 to 25 hours of gameplay. That's the result of rewriting just the first 45 minutes of the original version I had released at the beginning of Early Access. And even that was supposed to be just part 1 of 3. Looking back, knowing what I know now, I would have called myself delusional. I had to get realistic. To stay on track, I had to make sacrifices. I decided that I would pour everything I had into a smaller, self-contained experience. One that could stand alone if I failed, but still leave the door open for more if I succeeded. One of the biggest struggles was time management. As a solo dev, when you're coding, you're not writing. When you're writing, you're not mapping. When you're mapping, well, you get the idea. And it wasn't just the workload. A JRPG needs so much. Music tracks, monster graphics, character sprites, tile sets, sound effects, you name it. And I wasn't a pixel artist or a musician. I quickly learned why more experienced devs warn you against trying to make a JRPG alone, especially as a newbie. So what's a fledgling indie dev to do? The answer, I hoped, was to seek out other creative minds. And that's when I discovered itch.io, a website dedicated to all things indie gaming. I was in awe. I felt like I had found Atlantis. Pixel artists, musicians, writers, programmers, all gathered here like pilgrims at a holy site, each one presenting their work like an offering to the spirit of creativity itself. It was here that I found the artists and musicians who would lend their talents to my cause. Some for free, some for a price, but all with my gratitude and respect. There was only one problem. Neverspring Chronicles didn't fit neatly into any one genre. It wasn't pure fantasy, it wasn't steampunk, it wasn't sci-fi. It had elements of all 3, coded in a kind of neo-noir aesthetic.
Have you ever seen Krull?
No.
Yeah, you don't need to see Krull.
Without a full budget, I had to mix and match artists carefully, editing what I could to bring the world together. Sometimes I would fall in love with a piece of art, only to have to put it aside because it just wouldn't fit. I went through many iterations of each tile set, each character. If an image was too clean, I would downscale it to get that more grainy, pixelated SNES look. Sometimes this would even help to bring 2 different art styles closer together. I would try to map each zone in a way that either tricked the player's eye or led their gaze to look at something as a whole, rather than focus on one thing. It was far from perfect. And I'll be honest, the clashing art styles are still my biggest regret. Not because I didn't try, but because I wanted to honor the artist's work properly. But I couldn't let that stop me. I built the game in a way that I could easily reskin the graphics one day, if I ever got the chance. When I did the math, if I could sell 1,000 copies, I could afford to rework the visuals. So I would have to let the players decide if I deserved that chance. And that didn't bother me. Somehow, it felt right. Thankfully, the music was a different story. As I ventured beyond itch.io, I found even more resources. Open game art, Unity Asset Store, individual musicians and artists on Patreon. And one day, I stumbled across a free music pack by a musician named Aaron Koch. Not just a few tracks, but folders and folders of amazing audio, just given away freely. It stunned me how much effort had been poured into something just to help others. If this journey had taught me anything, it's that artists and programmers are a different breed. There's so much art, music, and software out there without a price tag, built to light the way for others. Still, using free assets came with a new problem. There's a good chance other games are using these same tracks, and music, especially in a JRPG, sets the soul of a scene. I wasn't afraid of being judged for using free music. I was afraid a player might encounter a track that already had meaning to them, that they might hear it and remember another story, feel another feeling. So I hung on to a handful of favorites and kept searching, and that's when I found Bit by Bit Bert. There's a saying, they might not remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. I can't remember exactly where it was that I found Bit by Bit Studio. All I know is when I heard his music, I was home. This was someone who had clearly played the same games that I had. I had finally found my Nobuo Uematsu. I looked at the licensing. Purchase asset packs or support through Patreon. I checked my wallet. Nothing but dust and determination. So I made a choice. I canceled my Netflix subscription and redirected the funds to Bit by Bit Bert's Patreon. And it paid off. The soundtrack became one of Neverspring Chronicles' greatest strengths. Being a solo indie dev is grueling work, especially when you're patching gaps in your own skill set. It's easy to drown yourself trying to do everything perfect, but perfect is the enemy of done. What helped me to finally cross the finish line was acceptance. Acceptance of my own weaknesses, acceptance of my limitations, acceptance of the sacrifices needed to actually finish something. I had to stop fantasizing and start finalizing. If a scene or a piece of lore didn't move the story forward, it got cut, no matter how much I loved it. It felt like sort of a betrayal sometimes, like I was abandoning my own hard work and creativity. But I learned something. Even the things you leave out don't fully disappear. They leave traces, echoes that breathe life into your world in ways the player can feel, even if they never know why. While I couldn't hide my lack of budget without turning 20 years into 40, in the end, it wasn't money that built this world. It was belief. Belief that one thing I truly couldn't afford was to give up.